My name is Olivia Carter. I am 27 years old. At my parents' house in Reno, Nevada, during what was supposed to be a simple birthday dinner for my older sister, my mom stood up in front of 3 dozen relatives and announced that my family had talked it over and decided I was no longer allowed to cook for them because I took over everything. My dad backed her up like it was some official decision, and Stephanie, the oldest and the guest of honor, calmly added that my food had no flavor, and people were just too polite to admit it. My son Logan stared at them stunned while I stood there, holding a stack of plates, and realizing this wasn't just about one meal. It was about years of being treated like the unpaid help in my own family. That moment at the table was the line for me the night I stopped trying to impress them, and the beginning of everything that came after, when their big plans fell apart. Their money disappeared, and they suddenly needed the daughter they had just pushed aside. If you've ever had parents or siblings turn on you like that, tell me in the comments how you handled it because this is what I did next. 3 hours earlier, the same people now gasping at the announcement had been going back for seconds of my lemon herb chicken roasted vegetables and a vegan pasta salad I made for my cousin Brianna, who can't eat gluten. 2 weeks before that, I was at my kitchen table with my husband Daniel, scribbling notes while Logan colored superheroes in the corner. My mom wanted something nice, but not too fancy. Stephanie had texted me a long list of things she didn't do when it came to food, and my middle sister Jenna sent a shrug emoji and a whatever you pick is fine. That's our family in a nutshell. Stephanie makes demands, my mom and dad orbit around her. Jenna stays quiet, and I, the youngest, am expected to make it all magically work. I've been doing it since college, turning our parents' dated Reno house into Pinterest parties they can brag about later. By the Thursday before the party, my car looked like a mobile pantry. I pushed an overflowing cart through the grocery store, double-checking Brianna's gluten-free ingredients on my list, grabbing enough chicken to feed a small army, and hunting down the fancy sparkling water my mom suddenly decided she preferred to soda. When I finally unloaded everything into our little rental's kitchen, it was already dark outside, and Daniel teased that I was basically running a catering business I didn't get paid for. Logan dragged folding chairs out from the hall closet, asking if he could help hang the string lights at Grandma and Grandpa's tomorrow. I told myself that all the exhaustion would be worth it when everyone sat down to a warm meal and my parents looked proud. That's what always kept me going, even though I knew deep down that pride was reserved for Stephanie's real estate wins and Jenna's steady accounting job, not my cooking, or the social media accounts I manage for a small marketing agency downtown. Saturday morning, I was at my parents' house before the sun rose over the Sierra Nevada mountains, sliding trays into their old oven and rearranging furniture, while my mom wandered around pointing at dust I'd apparently missed. Daniel arrived an hour later with Logan and their arms full of decorations, and the three of us strung lights across the covered patio that overlooks their patchy backyard. Reno can be brutally dry, but that night the air felt soft, almost forgiving, and for a moment I let myself believe this party might finally be the one where my mom actually hugged me and said she appreciated me. Brianna texted that she was excited about the gluten-free option. Stephanie sent a casual hope. It's cute. And Jenna sent nothing at all. When the guests started arriving, people complimented the way I'd turned plastic tables into something that looked like an actual event, and I repeated my usual line, "Oh, it's nothing," even though my feet were already sore. During the actual dinner, everything looked like a montage. Brianna raved about the pasta salad, asking for the recipe. Our neighbors, Kevin and Monica Rhodes, who my parents had insisted I invite to fill out the table, told me it looked like something out of a magazine. Logan stole extra roasted potatoes when he thought I wasn't looking, and Daniel kept squeezing my shoulder when he passed by with drink refills. My dad carved the chicken and joked about me putting the local restaurants out of business, and for a couple of hours I let myself feel like maybe I wasn't the family screw-up after all. Then the plates emptied, the dessert was mostly gone, and I slipped into the kitchen to start cleaning because that's what I always do when the talking gets loud and the compliments start fading into background noise. That's when my mom followed me and my dad right behind her and asked everyone still sitting down to listen up for a second. I stood there at the end of the table holding those plates when she announced that they had talked and decided my cooking caused drama, that I took over every family moment, and that for the sake of peace, I was done hosting or cooking for them. My dad folded his arms, backing her up like it was some kind of intervention instead of an ambush. Stephanie leaned her elbow on the table, smirking, and said that honestly, most people preferred modern food anyway, and had just been polite about my boring, homey style. Jenna looked like she wanted to melt into her chair, but she didn't say a word. Logan's jaw tightened. Daniel started to speak, and I shot him a look, because if I broke down or screamed, they'd call me dramatic. So I swallowed hard, said I appreciated the feedback, and went back into the kitchen pretending the plates in my hands were the only things that mattered in that moment. A little later, when most people had moved to the living room or the patio, I walked in with a stack of clean dishes and stopped in the doorway as I heard Stephanie's voice cutting through the low buzz of conversation. She was pacing near the sliding glass door with her phone pressed to her ear, bragging about closing a new listing near Lake Tahoe and talking about dropping around $15,000 on a rooftop buyout at a fancy restaurant for my parents' upcoming anniversary. No more backyard potlucks, she said, laughing. I'm going to show them what a real event looks like, not Olivia's casserole nights. My mom's earlier words clicked into place. This wasn't just about my cooking. It was about clearing the stage so Stephanie, the oldest, could be the star of every future family moment. As the youngest, I'd spent years doing the invisible labor, and now they were cutting me loose so they could pay for something flashier and pretend I'd never mattered. I finished scrubbing pans long after everyone had left my hands pruny and my back aching. My mom texted me asking for the name of the seasoning I'd used on the chicken, like the ambush hadn't happened at all. My dad sent a message in the family group chat about how fun the night had been, and Stephanie dropped a selfie of her blowing out candles with the caption, "Best birthday ever." Jenna sent a single heart emoji and nothing else. I stared at my phone, feeling like I'd been erased in real time. Logan sat at the kitchen island in our place with a glass of milk, telling me quietly that what they did was messed up. Daniel asked if I wanted him to say something to my mom, but after a long pause, I shook my head, opened the family group chat, and muted it. I wasn't ready to fight them, but I was done begging for their attention. That night, for the first time in years, I went to bed without my phone next to my pillow, waiting for my parents to need something. The following week at work, my manager Erica Stone pulled me into her office after a client meeting. I handle social media campaigns and small events for local businesses, and usually I'm the one with the upbeat ideas, but she'd noticed my energy was off. "You look like someone wrung you out and forgot to uncrumple you," she said gently. I laughed, then told her an edited version of what happened at the party, how my parents had basically fired me from being their in-house planner in front of everyone. Erica didn't act shocked that a family would do that. Instead, she asked when I'd last done something big only for myself. Later, my coworker and friend, Taryn Blake, leaned over the divider between our desks and suggested we get drinks after work with a few people from the office. Normally, I'd say I had to hurry to my parents' house to help with something, but that night I said yes. Sitting on a patio downtown listening to coworkers talk about their own messy families, I realized no one else there expected me to fix their lives. A month after the birthday dinner, I was folding laundry on our worn-out couch when my phone lit up with my dad's name. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me, so I answered and put it on speaker while Logan worked on homework at the coffee table and Daniel loaded the dishwasher. My mom's voice came on first, overly cheerful, asking how I was and if I was still doing that social media thing. Then my dad cleared his throat and told me they were starting to plan their wedding anniversary, this big milestone they'd been hinting about for months. Stephanie, he said, had been planning something extravagant, but she'd gotten into some online investment program that promised crazy returns and had lost almost all of the money she'd set aside, plus she'd charged more on her credit card to try to make it back. She's really stressed, my mom added, and we were hoping you could step in and do one more of your cozy dinners. Your parties always make the house feel warm. I stood in the middle of our living room holding one of Logan's t-shirts, staring at the wall, like there might be some script up there, telling me what a good daughter says. You stood up last month and told everyone I take over too much, I reminded them. You said I was done hosting and that no one really liked what I make. There was a long silence on the line. My mom tried to laugh it off as one of those things families say when they're stressed, and my dad muttered that maybe they had been a little harsh, but it was water under the bridge. I told them it was not water under the bridge for me. If they wanted a cozy dinner, they could call whatever restaurant Stephanie had planned to rent out and ask them to turn down the lights. My dad sputtered something about doing this for the family, and my mom mentioned how they'd already told people it would be at their house, but I told them I wasn't available, and hung up before my resolve could crack. Instead of spending the next weekends buried in my parents' kitchen, I planned something small at our place. I texted Kevin and Monica, the neighbors who'd seen the birthday blow-up, and invited them over with their little girl. Taryn came too, bringing a store-bought pie she kept apologizing for, and Daniel fired up our tiny grill on the narrow patio behind our apartment. Logan dragged out a card table and we covered it with a plain tablecloth, nothing matching, nothing coordinated except the simple fact that everyone there actually cared about us. There were no elaborate centerpieces, no strict playlists, no mental checklist running in my head about whether my mom would think the napkins were tacky. Kevin joked that this was the best food he'd had in months, even if I'd just made burgers and roasted vegetables, and Monica rolled her eyes and stole one of Logan's fries. Taryn raised her plastic cup and toasted to Olivia, doing things for people who deserve her, and I felt something inside me shift. I didn't have to live my whole life waiting for my parents to clap. The night of my parents' anniversary, I put my phone in a drawer and took Logan to a movie. When we got home, there were 3 missed calls from my mom and 1 from Jenna, plus a text from my niece Kayla, who is Stephanie's teen daughter. I called Kayla back. She sounded half angry, half exhausted, and told me the party had been a mess. Stephanie had tried to cobble something together with last-minute catering that showed up late and short on food. My parents had argued in the kitchen about whether to order pizza or just cut the cake early. Decorations were thrown together, uneven strings of dollar store banners taped crookedly across the wall. Guests left early, murmuring about the weird tension. My mom had snapped at a relative for spilling wine. Stephanie had spent half the night on her phone, arguing with someone about the online program that took her money, and Jenna just stood there handing out plates like she was a stranger in her own family. Grandma said you abandoned them, Kayla added quietly, but honestly, it felt like they did this to themselves. The next morning, I logged onto Facebook during my break at work and saw my mom's post in our extended family group. She didn't name me outright, but everyone knew who she meant when she wrote about certain daughters who would rather watch our family struggle than step up. Stephanie and a couple of distant relatives liked the post right away. I felt that old, familiar shame creep up my spine, even though I knew exactly how the last few months had played out. Then I saw a comment from Kayla under it. Grandma, maybe you should think about the way you talk to Aunt Olivia and how much she's done for you. She doesn't owe anyone anything. More comments appeared, some trying to smooth it over, some clearly uncomfortable. My mom stopped replying, but she didn't delete the post either. I closed the app, my heart racing, and went back to scheduling promotional posts for a local coffee shop. The world kept moving, and I realized theirs could spin without me. Around that time, Taryn told me about a program at the Reno Community Center where they needed volunteers to help plan events for local kids and families. She knew I loved organizing things, even if my parents pretended it was just controlling behavior. She introduced me to Marcus Hill, the center director, who listened to my ideas about doing a back-to-school party with a mix of fun and practical help, like games and backpack giveaways. Instead of asking whether it was too much, he asked how he could get funding for everything on my list. Logan and Kayla volunteered to help, and I watched them hang banners in the gym while Marcus and I arranged tables loaded with school supplies. When kids started pouring in trying on free sneakers and stuffing notebooks into their new backpacks, one little girl hugged me and said it was the best day she'd had all summer. Marcus clapped me on the back later and told me I had a gift for making people feel seen. No one there cared that my food wasn't gourmet or that the balloons weren't exactly symmetrical. They just cared that someone showed up. One afternoon after the event, I sat at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee and opened an email from Stephanie. My first instinct had been to ignore it, but curiosity got me again. She wrote that she was sorry for what she said at her birthday, that she had been jealous for years, because everyone talked about how thoughtful I was and how much effort I put into things. She admitted that the online coaching program she'd joined had convinced her to pour nearly $15,000 into a scheme that promised to triple her money if she recruited others, and she had tried to act like everything was under control while she spiraled deeper into debt. When she saw the anniversary fall apart, she realized how much of the family's stability had quietly depended on me. Then she pivoted into asking if we could meet up, just the two of us, so she could apologize in person and maybe talk about ways I could help her rebuild. I stared at that last part for a long time. Somehow, even her apology came with a job assignment. I didn't reply to Stephanie. I closed my laptop, took Logan to the park, and spent the rest of the afternoon watching him race other kids down the slide instead of thinking about my sister's latest crisis. A few weeks later, as the leaves in Reno finally started to turn, my parents called again. This time, my dad's voice sounded frayed in a way I hadn't heard before. They had taken out personal loans to help Stephanie stay afloat and had tried to flip a used camper into some kind of side business, renting it out for weekend trips, but it had needed way more repairs than they expected. Between the loans, the repairs, and the credit card debt they were already juggling, they were now in more than $30,000 of debt. "We're drowning," my dad said. My mom added that their church friends were starting to notice they were off, and she wanted me to plan a big holiday dinner to show everyone they were still okay. They also needed help catching up on payments and thought I might be able to temporarily take over some of their bills. I asked them point blank why they thought I was still the safety net after they humiliated me and cut me off from the one thing I'd consistently done for the family. My mom said they'd already apologized by calling me and asking me to help, as if the act of needing me was some kind of olive branch. My dad reminded me that they had raised me as though that meant I owed them my 20s, my bank account, and my sanity. I thought about the kids at the community center who hugged me without expecting anything in return, about Logan's quiet loyalty, about Kayla standing up for me online. I told my parents I wasn't going to send them money, and I wasn't planning any more parties. If they needed someone to save their image, they could talk to the daughter they'd cleared the stage for at my expense. My mom gasped. My dad snapped that I was being cruel, and I hung up before my resolve softened. Not long after that, Jenna texted me late one night. She'd been the quiet one during all of this, the middle sister who floated between Stephanie's confidence and my desperation to keep the peace. Her message was short but heavy. She said she was sorry for staying silent at the birthday dinner and at the anniversary, that she'd always known our parents favored Stephanie and leaned on me, and she hadn't wanted to rock the boat. She wrote that she'd been talking to a therapist who told her you can't be neutral in a family that hurts people, and she wanted to make things right between us. She suggested we meet up for coffee without our parents or Stephanie. I stared at that message just like I'd stared at Stephanie's email. I could feel a tiny part of me wanting to say yes to hear her out, but another part knew that opening that door might be the first step back into a house I was finally walking out of. I put the phone down and never replied. Meanwhile, the consequences my parents and sisters had sown started catching up with them in ways that had nothing to do with me. Word spread in their neighborhood that they had turned on the daughter who hosted every backyard barbecue and holiday dinner, and some of the same people who used to crowd their house for parties started hosting their own gatherings instead, without inviting my parents. Stephanie lost her job at a casino hotel in town, where she'd been doing part-time event coordination after management found out she'd been trying to recruit coworkers into that same sketchy program during work hours. One of the women she'd convinced to join filed a complaint, and then a small claims case against her when the promised returns never appeared, and Stephanie had to settle by giving up some of her commission savings. She moved back into my parents' cramped house to save money, and the three of them became a little storm cloud of resentment, calling each other selfish, while clinging to the idea that I was the one who'd abandoned them. While all of that played out, my own life, quietly, got better. Erica noticed the success of the community center event and suggested our agency sponsor parts of the next one, putting me in charge of coordinating it with Marcus. She gave me a small promotion and a raise, nothing extravagant, but enough that Daniel and I could finally put some money into savings and replace the couch we'd been talking about getting rid of for years. Marcus asked if I'd considered joining the center's advisory board, pointing out that I clearly understood how to make people feel welcome. Logan bragged to his friends that his mom runs parties for the whole city, and Kayla came by more often, saying she liked hanging out in a house where no one was yelling about credit card bills. At work, Taryn joked that I had become the event queen of Reno and insisted on scheduling our next happy hour far away from any place my parents might show their faces. That winter, Marcus and I put together a coat and blanket drive at the community center, followed by a simple holiday party for families who were barely getting by. I watched Kevin and Monica help sort donations, Taryn run around with a clipboard organizing volunteers, and Logan and Kayla lead a group of kids in decorating cheap paper ornaments like it was the most important job in the world. A woman in a worn-out jacket hugged me near the end of the night and told me she didn't know how she would have gotten warm clothes for her kids without this event. Standing there in the crowded, noisy gym, I realized these people weren't asking me to prove my worth. They already saw it. They didn't care if my centerpieces matched or if the food came from a box mix instead of a high-end caterer. They cared that someone bothered to show up and try. After that, I made my boundaries official. I blocked my parents and both sisters' numbers, muted them on every social platform, and told Kayla that she was always welcome in my life, but I wasn't available for messages relayed from Grandma. Kayla nodded and said she understood that she loved her mom and grandparents, but she could see how badly they'd treated me. Logan asked if that meant we'd never go to Grandma and Grandpa's again, and I told him the truth, that sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of people who can't or won't stop hurting you, even if they're your parents. Daniel backed me up, saying we were allowed to build a life that wasn't constantly interrupted by someone else's emergency. It didn't feel like slamming a door. It felt like calmly locking one that had been swinging open in every storm and finally finding peace on the other side. Now, when I think about those years I spent trying to earn my parents' approval with perfectly roasted chicken and color-coordinated napkins, it feels like watching someone else's life. I still love cooking, but now it's for Logan's birthday sleepovers, for late-night dinners with Daniel after Logan goes to bed, for community events, where kids don't care if the frosting is lopsided. My parents, Stephanie and Jenna, are off dealing with the fallout of their own choices, and I don't check in to see how that story ends. I don't hate them, but I also don't forgive them, because forgiveness in our family has always meant, let us hurt you the same way again, and call it love. I'm not doing that anymore. If you grew up being told that your value only exists in what you can do for other people, especially your parents, I hope my story reminds you that you're allowed to step away. Don't wait for a public humiliation to wake you up. Walk away the first time they show you they care more about how you serve them than who you are. Thank you for listening to my story. Tell me in the comments what you would do if your own parents tried to treat you like staff instead of family.